Hello and welcome to another episode of Beer Man's Noble Beer Reviews. Today I have another beer from 11th Hour Brewing Company out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This beer is called Land Beast Original. It's an Imperial Stout aged 21 months in Widow Jane bourbon barrels. I'm not very familiar with Widow Jane bourbon, but 21 months is a pretty substantial amount of time for barrel aging. So I'm hoping that the base beer can hold up to that. I don't know. I've never had this before. I've had several beers from these guys, but never one that was like barrel aged in a bigger beer like this. It is 11.5 ABV. Yeah, that's it. I'm going to crack it open and see what we got here. I got this from a friend that told me this was like a dark horse beer that no one in Pittsburgh was talking about, but it's a great beer. So I will say that literally has no head at all, which is less of a problem with this style of beer, of course, but still not necessarily the best thing. But it is very, very dark, really dark brown with no head. There is a lot of bourbon in that aroma. So I can definitely smell that this has been in a barrel for a long time. I mean, in or very wet barrels. Because there's a ton of bourbon. It almost has like a little bit of a smoky, peaty character, like single malt, like Scotch or single malt American whiskey. But I do definitely get some like dark chocolate and fudge and some dark fruit in there too. But it smells like this is going to be big, very spirit driven, so we'll see. Yeah. Um, it is very spirit driven. Uh, it's funny because it has so much bourbon flavor, but it's not that hot, which is interesting. It actually, it reminds me of a lot of KBS, which is weird because this doesn't have coffee in it. But it's just, I don't know if you've ever had a barrel aged stout that was like so barrel heavy that it almost has like a slight like tartness to it, but it's not from infection. It's something from the barrel. So it's a very, very big bourbon up front. Of course, you're gonna have that for being aged 21 months. It does seem like that the barrel is almost overwhelming the beer, but not to the point where like it's making this just taste like watery bourbon. It's not, because I've had that too. That's not this. There definitely is some nice roasty character, which I think is what was making me think like KBS, because the roasty and coffee. Um, and there's a lot of dark chocolate. You could probably tell by the way this poured, but it is very undercarbonated too, which is fine, especially given how bourbon forward this is. It's almost like drinking a spirit, anyways. Um, it's really interesting. It's one of those things that's like it's very rough around the edges, but there's also not any inherent flaws with it either, if that makes sense. Like, there's nothing wrong with the stout. The stout underneath, the barrel doesn't have like these green appley flavors. It is just very hot, um, and it's the beer isn't quite big enough to handle 21 months of aging. But overall, I still enjoy it as a beverage. Is this the best, one of the better like barrel aged stouts I've had? Absolutely not. But I've had a ton that were not this good either. Um, and now I'm curious what this costs. I don't know because I told a friend of mine gave it to me, but I would like to find out because if this was relatively inexpensive, I would definitely buy. Like if this was $10 or less per can, I would buy this again for sure. Um, and this was definitely a pet project for them if this was in barrels for 21 months. I mean, for a brewery that doesn't have a big barrel program, and I don't even know that they put out any barrel aged stouts before this was a big project for them. And it's probably the first time they did something like this, and for that being the case, I think this is very, very well done. If you want big sweet stouts, this is not for you. If you don't like um, overly hot or boozy or bourbon saturated barrel aged stouts, you definitely don't want this. Very, very barrel forward, but I love bourbon, so I'm okay with that. I wish the beer was a little bit more robust to handle all of that, to make it more balanced and just a richer experience in general. But overall, I think it's pretty good, and I would buy this again if I had the opportunity. Well, I didn't buy it the first time. I would buy this if I had the opportunity, if it was at a relatively good price. So that's the only caveat. If this was like $15 a can, which I would highly doubt, but if it was, I would not buy this again. But if it's a relatively good price for a barrel aged stout, yeah, I'd give this a go again. It's good enough to revisit, and I would like to actually maybe. It's one of the few beers that I would like to sit on for a little while for maybe some of that heat to die off to see what it turns into. But it might just go by the wayside because the stout isn't that big. But who knows? I would still like to experiment and see what would happen with it. But I think that's all I got in this one. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think, and I look forward to doing the next one. Thanks.